So we're coming to the end of this segment on human factors in architecture. And as we have at the end of the segment on form and the end of the segment on physical considerations, we're going to have a talk here about how do you pull all these things together, all the different aspects of human factors that we've been talking about. How might that be incorporated into a single building? And today we're going to look at just one building and really look at it in all of these aspects of human factors and try to assess what kind of difference that makes in buildings. The building we're going to look at in this talk is Austin Bergstrom International Airport. It's a building that was completed the first phase in 1999. There have been 3 or 4 other phases that have come along. We're going to talk probably primarily about that first phase, but we'll have some illustrations and have some discussion of some of the subsequent phases. But the idea of this is to see, this big, complicated building type. How can you try to make a truly humanistic environment, one that really thinks through issues of human factors in a building as large and as complex and as influential on thousands and thousands of people every day as an airport is? In a normal times, about 30,000 people a day pass through that airport. It's an enormously consequential building. So how do human factors work there? So the airport was initially the first phase completed in 1999. That makes it almost or about 20 years old now. That really was the initial phase. This is a phase that was actually added in 2014. Airports always grow, and this one has continued to grow and flourish in that 20 years. Fundamentally, it's based on designation and organization of uses. So this was that first lecture or talk we had in this segment, where we looked at the importance of identifying certain functions and then taking those functions and organizing them into building form. And in this case, this is hugely critical in an airport. Man, I can tell you, this is like, it literally is life and death in the case of an airport. Because there are a lot of functions in an airport that are more or less industrial functions. They're fueling airplanes with diesel fuel, which is pretty toxic stuff. They're having carts and carts of bags being carried around and put on the planes down here. It's a kind of industrial operation down there. It's incredibly noisy. If you have never been on the tarmac at an airport, my God, it's hugely noisy. It's fairly smelly, but that's a whole kind of zone of industry down there trying to get these planes in and out of the airport. Now, contrast that with you've got mom and dad and little kids and extremely vulnerable human beings who are also a part of this complex. And just as we mentioned in that lecture on designation and organization of use, one really important reason for doing that is just practicality. You need to keep the little kids and their play area away from the open fire and the cooking area. And that's been since mankind began. Well, that's very much the case in an airport. There've got to be these very contrasting kinds of functions that need to be clearly separated from each other. In addition to that, you have this whole notion of security that we have these days. So you have to keep the secure people that have been cleared and who don't have guns and don't have things they shouldn't have on an airplane, separated from the people who have not yet been cleared. So it's a lot of designating and organizing different uses in different places for some very powerful reasons that have to do with practicality and have to do with security. So in the case of Austin-Bergstrom International Airport, there are two distinctly different parts of the building. There's what's called the land side over here, and that has to do with people and buses and taxis and vans and all of that coming and going here and delivering people to the airport, them going through ticketing, or after they come back, going through baggage claim. But those kinds of functions happen in the land side of the airport. And there's one kind of architectural character and one kind of form that happens in that part of the building. And then there's another part of the building that is the air side of the airport. And that has to do with the interface of people with airplanes and the jet bridges and getting people onto those airplanes, feeding them, letting them go to the bathroom, all those kinds of things that have to do with going on and taking off in an airplane and coming back, and all those people versus airplane kinds of activities that go on there. So architecturally, it is a very clear distinction between the land side and the air side. And in section, that is particularly apparent, where there is the whole air side of the airport here with big open spaces, great trusses, lots of natural light coming in, a pleasant environment for waiting and for getting something to eat before your flight or buying a book or something like that. All of that is here. And then a very different part of the airport here that has to do with interface with cars and buses and transportation and getting to and from places, getting baggage claim and all of that here, ticketing up here, all of those functions that then tie directly into a kind of lower level down here. And you can see that in that section there. This lower level that then takes your bags and all those kind of industrial functions out to the airplane here. So the passengers go through that up to the main concourse level here and to the airplanes, while their bags and everything go this other route down and onto the airplane like that. So a huge part of designing a building like an airport is understanding what uses are here, what can be close to something else, what has to be very distant from something else. How do all these things relate and reinforce each other and make the experience of every one of those functions just as optimal as it can be? So that's a huge part of especially the plan of the airport. In this case, they're kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 entry points and exit points right there. And then this whole concourse on the upper level of airplanes and hold rooms that distribute people. It's a very simple, clear diagram for how those things work. And of course, there's all kinds of other things back on lower levels here where the food comes in for all those concessions. It's cleared in terms of security. It's taken through the back door in the back way, and it gets up to all those restaurants and cafes and places that are on this main level. All of that invisible to the person who's the passenger, but very, very important for the functioning of the airport. Okay, so one major aspect is the designation and organization of uses. A second really important thing in this airport is a thought about architectural determinism. How can you actually enhance people's behavior in an airport? How can you make it less stressful? How can you make it easier for them to figure out where they need to go and what they need to do? And just intuitively, they do that and they don't get clogged up or discombobulated or stressed out, which actually does happen to a lot of people in a lot of airports. So it's that notion of how can you actually influence the behavior of the people as they move through the airport. And in the case of this airport, the architects were very interested in what they were calling intuitive wayfinding, so that people just, everything's so logical where you go next and you can see where you're going. There are many airports that are sort of like a rat maze where you've got to sort of follow all the signs and you get to where you're going to go. But in fact, it's very, very complicated and you're twisting and turning and moving. But in this airport, the idea is, can we make it super simple and clear so that intuitively people know where they want to go, they can see it over there, and they can go to it. So people enter from the front here. They can see the ticketing immediately in front of them right there. They enter that door. That's right here. And then from that point, which is right there, you're able to see the ticketing on one side. You're able to see security right in front of you right there. You're able to see concessions, which are over here in case I want to get something to eat. And you're able to see the gates right straight through there. So from the front door, you can see all those things if you're disembarking. And then you can also see when I come back, you can see where the baggage claim is and how to get back out of the airport there. It's just as logical, clear, simple, intuitive as possible. And the idea in making it this way is that you will, I don't know, in some ways shape the behavior of people, determine the behavior of people who are coming in that door, and helping them just very simply find their way through security, find their way to concessions, get whatever they want to eat or a book to read, get onto the airplane, and all of that's just as intuitive as it can possibly be. Even when you get off of the airplane, the idea is very much to make it so that you know, where do I exit? Where do I go from here? Now, there are signs, of course, that say, you know, to baggage claim or to ground transportation, as there are at all airports. But it's also very nice if you just walk out, you kind of get a very clear sense of where you should go. One thing that bugs me in a lot of airports is you walk out and the hall that way and the hallway that way look exactly the same. Do I go this way? Do I go that way? Let me find a sign to figure out where I'm supposed to go. But in the Austin airport, that curve is a device of letting you know that, you know, just intuitively we sense entry and exit being in the middle being the center of things. So you get off of an airplane, people just, you can watch them. They just gravitate toward that center. And of course, that's where the exits are that take you out and to baggage claim and to ground transportation and other things. So that curve is a device for having a center to the building, having a place where you know that that's where you exit and go to the outside. And it's not equal looking both ways. When you walk out of that airplane, you can tell I'm in a different place in relation to the center. I know exactly where that center is. And that gives you an intuitive way to go. Okay, so we looked at designation, organization of uses. And next couple of talks, we looked at this whole notion of architectural determinism. Then we had 4 talks that centered on this notion of humanism, this doctrine that respects mankind and their capacity for self-realization through reason. And so how can you make this a place that really is centered on human beings? Or as Alvar Aalto said, architecture, the real thing, occurs when mankind stands in the center. How can you make every decision about how people experience this building? And so I think this airport is imbued with humanism at many different levels. There certainly is this evidence of humanity, maybe even in particular the humanity in Austin, that's there in a lot of the artwork. There's a series of 9 murals over the American Airlines ticket counters here. One of the first things you see when you come into the airport. And it's a whole series of murals of a Hispanic family having a picnic in their backyard. And so they're barbecuing and they're dancing and they're playing games together. But it's just this little slice of everyday life in Austin for a family that's not a hoity-toity family, an ordinary Austin family enjoying themselves, their friends, their family in the backyard in this picnic. The selection of that as artwork is a note to human values. This is something we think is important in our community, and that's the kind of artwork we put in the airport. There is, in fact, a live music stage right in the very center of the airport there. And it's pretty much every afternoon there's live music that plays there. And that's, again, it's an expression of humanism that's in the airport. The scale of the retail spaces, it's the scale of the large space there is very important for not making us feel claustrophobic or making it feel like, well, there's thousands of people milling and moving around here, and it's easy to feel jammed in and too tight. But the scale of the space makes it clear that this is a gracious place for that number of people to circulate. But then it scales down when you start to go in a bookstore or in a restaurant, and there's another whole scale of the space that, again, relates to human experience. So humanism is in the airport all over. Certainly that notion of two scales, the big grand scale, the smaller scale, even the lighting here, when you sit and have your coffee and get it at a concession over here, it's a different kind of scale, almost like a sidewalk cafe. The signage, other things like that reduce the scale. And it goes all the way down to these little seating areas, the hold rooms where they scale down to a smaller height. So you have that grand, appropriate scale for thousands of people moving through an airport, but then also this much more intimate scale of how you experience the everyday movement and activities that happen in the airport. And then all the way down to the tiniest scale here. The handrails in the airport are very interesting, where they have to be really super strong and made out of steel, because people bang their bags up against that and it takes a lot of abuse. So definitely it's a very strong handrail that happens there. But then when you start to touch it, this piece right here, and again, it's metal because it needs to be that durable and that strong, but it actually is a hand-wrought piece of metal that was made by a local craftsman in Austin named Lars Stanley. And it's just the shape of your hand. It's not a cylinder and it's not square. It actually is hand-wrought to be the shape of your hand as you grasp it there. So at all scales, that humanism is inspiring the design of the airport. Okay, so let's think through some of these 8 notions of a larger scale environment that seem to contribute to humanism that we expressed in one of the earlier talks. So one of the key of those 8 things is this notion of convenience. When I need to do something, is it convenient for that to be done right there? And again, this is a huge driver in the design of the airport, so that when you're in this hold room, the idea is that the very first thing you do is you go through security. You see, okay, I'm at gate 10. I go into the hold room right there. You locate where you're going to leave on the airplane. That's very important to people, to have an assurance that I know when my plane's leaving. It's right here. I know where my hold room is. So they touch base there first. And then super convenient to that, there's concessions. There's a place I can browse for a book. There's a bathroom. I can take a leak before I get on the plane. There are places to get food, coffee. All of those kinds of things are immediately convenient to the gates right there. So that, again, it's a notion of convenience. Another thing that one of those 8 things we talked about was activities, many different kinds of activities. And this airport stretches the activities that are normally in an airport. So yeah, there are concessions, and yeah, there are hold rooms, and yeah, there are bathrooms and all of those. But also, as I said, there's a live music performance stage that's a part of it. This was actually the first airport to do that. Subsequently, other airports have started copying that from Austin. But they're trying to make things that so you're not bored just sitting and waiting here. You can listen to music, you can get something to eat, you can buy a book, all of these activities are accommodated. Another one of those 8 characteristics of humanistic communities at a larger scale is the whole idea of a range of people accommodated so that it isn't exclusive, it's inclusive. And wow, the airport has got every slice of humanity. Rich people, poor people, old people, young people, fat people, skinny people. I mean, any kind of person is there at the airport. And amiably interacting with each other. So it has that range of people accommodated. Another really important thing we talked about was signs of human presence. And that's a really remarkable thing in the artwork in the airport. There were special commissioned pieces of art that were placed in the airport initially, and then they've continued to add more pieces of art since then. So I love these. These are down in the baggage claim area, done by a local artist, and it's like you opened up some bags and you're kind of seeing what, as a voyeur, you're seeing what these people have in their bag. So somebody's a musician, good thing for Austin here, and in the guitar case we're seeing postcards and where they've been and gigs they've played and all of that. You can see what they're wearing and their shoes, and but they're just really cool. Really, when you're waiting for your bags to come, and here's a little something to look at and be interested in, and it's a sign of human presence. It's communication. Even on the outside, there's not much exterior space at an airport, but there are artworks that actually are inspired by different flora and fauna of Texas at a much exaggerated scale, but just outside the baggage claim area, signs of human presence there. Artwork all the way through the airport. This one, a wonderful one by Sandy Fedoric, really talking about the kind of history of aviation, very appropriate for an airport. And then there are these little kiosks that were designed as part of the architecture, and they're doing a lot of things. They've got the fire hydrant, fire hose in here, which you have to have for security reasons, and there's the security camera up there, and there's the speaker system to make announcements. So there's a whole lot of things being accommodated technically in that. But there also is this little vitrine, this little glass box there that is for changing exhibits. And local civic groups in Austin from time to time put different exhibits in those spaces. This was not long after the airport opened, and that was the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center making an exhibit, not a very good one. Since then, local civic groups have gotten super competitive with each other, and there are beautiful exhibits in these. And they happen about every 30 feet as you move along the concourse there. And so, sometimes there might be a theme of the Umlauf Sculpture Garden, or there might be a theme of the Austin Symphony Orchestra, or all kinds of wacky local organizations, craft groups, art groups, religious groups, that have some kind of story to tell. And they explain that narrative in these little glass boxes. You can see one there, one there. They happen about every 30 feet all along the concourse. I love these things. It's so much fun to see what exhibit is there, and they change every month or so. A while back, my absolute favorite exhibit of all times was a whole bunch of women who went to the Baptist church in East Austin, got together, and they made an exhibit of church ladies' hats. And these are these elaborate hats that these women wear Sunday morning to church. And they were amazing. And every little vitrine had a different set of hats that were in it. It's a bit of the culture of Austin just on display in the airport. That's a perfect sign of human presence. It's telling us about our community and what their interests are, and the whole variety of things that go on in our community. This is a level of humanism in something like an airport that completely changes it from this anonymous, cold factory for sending people in the sky into something that really is a kind of civic and community building. So we've talked about all those things that generate a more humanistic environment at a larger scale. Last couple of talks we were discussing this notion of meaning, how do buildings communicate, and the airport has some very explicit things that they're trying to communicate. Actually, the city council and the mayor set up a committee to work with the architects, about 30 people from all different walks of life in Austin. And they were the Nature and Character of Austin Committee. And they were to communicate to the architects what is the nature and character of Austin and how might that be communicated in the airport. And they had a big influence on the design of the airport. Everything from the airport being made of materials that are very local materials. This is Texas pink granite, very characterful kind of granite. Central Texas is the second largest source of building stone in the United States. We have beautiful building stone. This is a very unique kind of local stone that's all over in the airport. Again, what is the nature and character of Austin? Well, in a very geological sense, it's these native stones that have been so much a part of our architecture throughout history. That actually is the same granite that's in the Capitol building. Then another thing that committee came up with was we've always been a high-tech community. We've always been a place that was interested in technology, long before digital technology. So the kind of engineering quality of the building, expressing how it's made, what it's made of, technology, those kinds of things were important from the point of view that committee, and the airport communicates that nature of our community. This is one of the newer additions in 2014, but again, that crisp, clean, kind of technological feeling of the airport. Very conscious of sun shading, very conscious of sustainability. It's been a big value of the airport all the way through. It actually is 100% on wind power, so it's using no fossil fuel for heating or cooling the airport. And then all the way through it, old parts, new parts, the bones of the building, the way it's put together, the way it's held up, its technology is very much a part of the architectural expression of the airport. It becomes really a major feature and a way of just creating interest and beauty in the architecture of the building. In this case, this elliptical form that you can just see when the loads get bigger in those beams that go across there, they get deeper, how all of them reinforce each other and then turn into sunshades as they go around the building there. So that local material is used not just macro in the building, but it's also made into these glyphs that you can see right here. These are in the baggage claim area. They're actually about 2 feet by 4 feet. They're quite large, but it's such a big room. They appear as a detail. And they are the seed pods and leaves of vegetation in Central Texas. And in fact, they're trees. The trees that I think I mentioned in an earlier lecture, the east-west streets in Austin used to be named for the trees of Texas. They're now 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. But they were originally like pecan and bodark and peach and live oak. And so all of those named trees become glyphs in that area carved in that granite. In another part of the airport, the limestone that is, again, a common stone in Central Texas. In this case, it's made into the topography of Central Texas. You can actually see Austin, and you can see the Colorado River, and you see the hill country, and all of that topography now created by digital technology. A CNC router created that piece of stone artwork that goes into the building. Again, talking about the nature and character of Austin, the geology of the place. There are these big murals, and they talk about the original plan of Austin, the Colorado River that we looked at in an earlier lecture, the 2 creeks going up on either side, the east-west streets named for the trees of Texas. Up on the walls there are then the glyphs that depict those trees. The north-south streets being named for the rivers of Texas. One of the other murals on the floor showing you the rivers of Texas as they go east-west across the state. So this is a little history lesson. It's while you're standing there bored waiting for your bag, there's a little communication here. There's meaning that talks to you about this being the Austin airport, and the history of Austin, and the geology of Austin, and the flora and fauna of Austin, and letting you know that you're in a particular place. Now, this airport has been extraordinarily popular. There are big industry organizations among aviation people that do polls and measure satisfaction with airports all over the world. And this airport, pretty much since it opened in 1999, has been in the top 5 airports in the United States in terms of user satisfaction. People saying, I love this place, I have a great experience here. And then they also are, on an international level, of airports their size. They're usually in the top 3 of airports their size in the world in terms of, again, user satisfaction. Now, to me, that's like a huge goal for architecture. Is it really getting user satisfaction? Are people happy using this place? Do they feel proud that this is in my community? This is my airport. Do they feel invested in that as a place that I care about and I enjoy? User satisfaction is a huge measure when it comes to human factors. In this case, the Austin airport has been extremely successful in that. Now, it's a constant battle for something like an airport as it grows, as it has to add on, as it has to constantly renew itself and have maintenance, to be able to keep up that kind of high quality physical environment that makes people feel like their needs are met, makes people feel like they can reach self-realization as humanism requires. Okay, see you next time.